Welcome, good morning, Vanakkam, Swagatham. In this video, I shall endeavor to prove to you what a classical genius, the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald S. Trump, really is. And the contents of this video are meant particularly for S. Jayashankar, Subramaniam Jayashankar, who is the External Affairs Minister of India, who therefore has to deal with personages like Donald Trump and others. And at this point in time, it's of particular importance to be able to unpack the riddle that Donald Trump is. My argument is that Trump is not as much of a riddle as he appears to be, and he appears to be a puzzling, brain-curdling riddle only because people haven't developed the perspective from which he can be understood best and understood rather easily, and surprisingly very easily. So I'm quite sure that Jayashankar, the External Affairs Minister of India, will find the contents of this video useful as well as interesting. How do you solve a problem like Maria? You know that song, don't you? How do you solve a problem like Maria? So the song that S. Jayashankar would be singing is, how do you solve a problem like Donald? So, Jayashankar, don't worry, it's not at all a problem that you cannot decipher, and here is my 2 penny worth of contribution to help you make this task easier than you think it is. Now, if you want to understand Donald Trump, all you have to do is to concentrate on Gaza, or as the Arabs pronounce it, Gaza. Variations in pronunciations. The Arab pronunciation is Gaza, the American pronunciation is Gaza, the Indian pronunciation is Gaza. So it doesn't matter, we know which region is under reference. So what about the American Gaza, the Trumpian Gaza, or the Arab Gaza? What is President Trump's vision for Gaza? If you can figure that out, then you can understand Donald Trump pretty well and adequately too. Okay, and this is what I'm going to do now. It is my considered opinion, as well as my humble submission, first to S. Jayashankar and then to people all over the world who are now extremely puzzled about this phenomenon called Donald Trump, is that Trump's vision of Gaza or Gaza is compacted out of 2 stories or episodes from ancient Greek history, Greek and Macedonian history. So please have a little patience and hear me out before you come to conclusions. If you put these 2 episodes together, then you will perfectly and immediately understand Trump's approach to solving the problem called Gaza or Gaza. The first story is from Aesop's Fables. Aesop is supposedly the writer of so many of these fables, who lived apparently some 500 years before Jesus Christ. There is ambiguity about him, whether such a character ever lived, or whether it was a name that was just chosen and ascribed to a collection of these very interesting stories with tremendous moral insights. There is no collection of fables more popular in the history of humanity than Aesop's Fables. And I would commend to parents to sit with their children and read Aesop's Fables to them and discuss the moral of each story. It is something that I did with my children to great advantage. One of the stories is the story of two crows and a monkey. Two crows and a monkey. Now, these are fables. Please don't say that I'm abusing X, Y, or Z. I can only work with the material available in the relevant fable. A fable is a story of which characters are birds or animals. Right? That's the meaning of fable. Now, in this fable, two crows come across a loaf of bread and they start fighting for possession. And particularly fighting on the point as to how to divide the loaf between them. So you need a mediator. So monkey comes along and says, don't fight, don't fight. It's so very bad. It's bad manners to fight and fight over a loaf of bread. I will divide the bread between the two of you. Okay? If you try to solve this problem just between the two of you, then the problem will never end. It is like the problem of Gaza. Israel and Palestinians, the Jews and the Palestinians cannot settle it. They have been fighting forever. Like the two crows, they have been wrangling over this loaf of bread called Gaza. They're not able to settle the issue between themselves. So then comes the monkey to mediate and says, I'll solve the problem. So the crows are both the crows are happy. They hand over the loaf of bread to the monkey. The monkey then sits in an august manner and he deliberately breaks the loaf of bread into two unequal parts and gives it to the two crows and says, now you eat. So the crow, which got the smaller of the two parts, now begins to complain. No, you've given the larger piece to the other crow. You've not been fair with me. So the monkey says, oh, is that so, really? Then he takes the bigger piece of the bread from the crow and gives it a large enough bite to make it now smaller than the other part which was smaller till then. And says, okay, now you eat. Then the crow which had the larger part of the loaf now begins to complain, saying that his part is now smaller than that of the other. So the monkey says, oh yes, you have a point. So he takes the other half of the loaf and he gives it a big enough bite to make that now smaller than this other piece. So what happens is, this process goes on, and end of the day, the entire loaf of bread ends up in the stomach of the monkey, and the two crows are quite pacified. Their quarrel is settled and they fly away. So this is the story that Donald Trump is following in his characteristic way of solving the problem of Gaza. Now in this I have to say that I cannot really blame Donald. If you remember the video I posted sometime in October of 2023, when this war had just broken out, and many people were harping the theme of the two states theory, etc. And I said, for the life of me, I don't understand how this solution can work. The one solution that cannot work is this two-nation theory, because there is nothing in the context which would validate such a solution. And I made certain suggestions in that video, which now I recognize with tremendous embarrassment and horror, resemble the solution that Donald Trump is adopting. And I hope that my video was not seen by Trump and the idea was not taken out of it. I did not make that suggestion in earnest. I was speaking tongue-in-cheek, but unfortunately that idea has been stolen by Trump, and he is now touting it to the rest of the world as his own idea. It doesn't matter. So please remember Aesop's fable, The Monkey and the Two Crows, in order to understand Donald Trump's solution to this long-standing, most vexatious and insoluble problem called Gaza or Gaza, right? So now Gaza ends up in his stomach, and he has now just yesterday posted a short video on his social media site, Truth Social, showing Gaza as Trump Gaza. Now, so far, he has been used to Trump Plaza. The next stage of Donald Trump's growth is Trump Gaza. And there are many of my friends in the US who are somewhat irreverential towards Trump and say that Trump will be known as the president who has produced the maximum presidential Gaza, GASS, gas. So ultimately, the office of the President of the United States, supposedly the most powerful office in the world, will be known for the period or for the duration of the 47th president's tenure as Trump Gaza. Now that's their opinion. I have nothing to do with it. I don't want to make light of the august office of the President of the United States of America. So that's the first story. The second episode, it's not a story, it's supposed to be an episode from the life of Alexander the Great. The story goes that in BC 333, Alexander, who was the king of Macedonia, the son of Philip of Macedonia, who became one of the greatest conquerors history has ever seen. Alexander the Great, Charlemagne and Napoleon are considered to be the greatest military leaders human history has seen. So in 333 BC, Alexander the Great reached a country called Phrygia, which is now in the modern Turkey. The capital of Phrygia was Gordia, 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 the capital of Phrygia. And there, Alexander came across an ancient wagon, the yoke of which was tied to a pillar. It was tied with a knot which compacted of several very complicated knots, K-N-O-T-S, knots. And the legend was that anyone who managed to unravel the knots and free the wagon from the pillar would become the ruler of the whole of Asia. Obviously, it's a great goal, it's a great attraction, great excitement. And understandably, this young conqueror, for whom the world was not the limit, was immediately tempted. So he set himself after liberating the wagon from the pillar. He tried to untie the knots. He tried for a while, but then found that he was not making any headway. Then practical sense like that of Donald Trump's practical sense dawned on him. He stepped back. He said, what difference does it make how I untie the knot? So he took out a sword and with one mighty cut, he cut the Gordian knot. This has lent itself to an idiom in the English language, and you're familiar with that idiom, cutting the Gordian knot. Now, the meaning of that idiom is improvising a practical and immediate solution to a problem that everyone else considered unsolvable. And that's precisely what Trump has done. I can't think of a better, more appropriate illustration for the idea or the story or the idiom of cutting the Gordian knot than Donald Trump's way of solving the problem of Gaza. You can't come across anything better than this. So don't think that President Donald Trump is just acting in an irrational, random, foolish, impetuous manner. The other day I saw an interview featuring an old gentleman who had served for about 27 years as the manager of Trump's chain of hotels. And then he says that this man has always acted impetuously. He never minds the consequences of what he says. He jumps into things, unmindful of where that would lead him, and then leaves it to others to bail him out. I don't think so. I think that Donald Trump is much more of a classical scholar than most other people give him credit for, at least in my humble opinion. If you want to understand Trump's way of solving the problem, the insoluble problem, the Gordian knot of Gaza, is precisely what he's projecting. So, Gaza will become a piece of Trump real estate. But the interesting thing is this. Trump makes it very clear, and only he can do it. He makes it very clear that he will not spend a pie, not a single dollar from the American taxpayers' contribution to the national exchequer will be involved in this. Others will pay for it, but he will own the real estate. Rulers in this region will invest all the money, and they'll help turn this cursed parcel of land into a Middle Eastern Riviera, and AI-generated images are now very much in circulation. And once all the beautiful work is done, once, according to him, this amazing job is done, he will come and take complete charge of it. So that it will become Trump's Trump's Gaza, which will either become part of Trump's Plaza, or, as some of his critics in the United States, Trump's Gaza. We'll wait and see which way it turns. Now, why should we mind this? Why should the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and his boss Narendra Damodar Das Modi pay attention to this? I tell you why. I hesitate to say this. I wish I did not have to say this, but I have to say this nonetheless because my Prime Minister is cozying up to Trump, and I have to say that I'm greatly worried about it. If Trump is who I think he is, then this is not a profitable exercise. It's not even advisable to do so, because we have a problem called Kashmir. We've been trying to settle this problem from 1947-48. Exactly the same story that we find about Gaza. The headache called Gaza also dates back more or less to the same period. And day after day, the problem has aggravated. Now, both India and Pakistan have to worry because they have not been able to settle the problem of Kashmir. So, the two slices of Kashmir, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, India occupied Kashmir. According to Pakistan, the territory that we control is India occupied Pakistan. According to us, the region under the control of Pakistan is POK, or Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And we are not able to settle this. Trump would say, after he has settled Gaza, he would say, well, I have a job to do. I have a plan. So he will call our Prime Minister and the General of Pakistan, because in Pakistan there is no point in calling the Prime Minister there, Shahbaz Sharif, or anybody else. The only person who calls all the shots is General Asim Munir. So Trump will call both of them and say, well, now you relax. I have a solution for the Kashmir problem once and for all. I'll turn that into a southeastern Riviera. It will be known as Trump's Kashmir. With that, the problem will be over. I hope not. I hope not. Therefore, Mr. Jaishankar, Mr. Prime Minister Narendra Damodar Das Modi, please be careful. Please be careful. Now, you will understand that what I am saying cannot be dismissed because Trump has already put his finger print on Ukraine. He has not claimed the whole of Ukraine to turn it into a Trump Ukraine. He has claimed part of it, and that's the rare earth minerals deal. Can you imagine Trump claiming that America assisted Ukraine to the tune of $500 billion, whereas everybody who knows what is what about this war over the last 3 years says that the total contribution extended or given by America to to Ukraine in various forms. Much of it did not reach in cash Ukraine. It was actually paid to the various arms dealers, arms industrialists, producers of arms in America itself, producing more jobs for Americans. Is $170 billion. Some put it at $131 billion. From where he got this idea? Initially he said $350 billion. Then the amount was inflated to $500 billion, so the equivalent of which must be paid back to America in the form of these rare earth minerals, which Elon Musk will use in manufacturing his electric cars more efficiently. So that's the nexus, which is already clear. So Trump, through his this trade deal, he is a deal maker, has already claimed a fair bit of Ukrainian revenue, Ukrainian economy, and the rest will follow in course of time. But then what Trump does not know is that he's underestimating Putin. Putin will swallow Ukraine at least 2 years before Trump begins his task in that regard. He's playing with somebody who is much, much, much smarter than himself. And as I said in my last video, Putin must be laughing all the way back home to Kremlin. So anyway, it's very interesting. I don't think there's any other person like Trump on the stage of world history. The reason why, in quick time, Trump has become the center of the world. Even though the whole world stands to lose from it, the fact is undeniable that he is today the focal point of the entire world. And Trump's style of solving problems is extremely fascinating. The reason why I went all the way back to ancient classical history, Greek history, to try and get some material in the light of which I can unravel this very unique psychology and international relations genius of Donald Trump. Well, that's all for the present. So please don't underestimate Trump. Don't laugh at him. My American friends, don't think that he's producing gas. No, he means business. He's a classical scholar. Read a bit of classical history, Greek mythology, a bit of literature. Then you will be able to understand Donald Trump and how his mind, his imagination works. Whether or not everything in the world, everything in history will work out according to Trump's plan is a very different question, because there is no instance ever in human history of anything having worked out according to the plan of a dictator. Things will seem to work for a while according to his plan or purpose. Then history will react with a vengeance, as it happened in the case of Napoleon Bonaparte. And if you want to know more about this, all you have to do is to read a novel. Interestingly, a novel by Victor Hugo, and the title of the novel is world famous. It's one of the most famous novels in the history of world literature. It's called Les Miserables, the miserable people, the miserable, Les Miserables, where there is a long account of the Battle of Waterloo and what happened in Napoleon in Waterloo. How Napoleon, who should never have lost the Battle of Waterloo, how he came to lose it, who defeated Napoleon, etc., etc. And Victor Hugo of the firm opinion that it was not a British who defeated Bonaparte, frustrated him, but then if it was not the British, then who? I will not give you the answer. You can get it from Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. So, congratulations Donald Trump for your fertile imagination. You deserve all our kudos for being such a classical genius. And I'm sure that there is no problem in the world which you cannot solve. And there are problems like Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, etc., etc. All these problems can be settled simply by turning all these regions into Trump's plazas. That's the ultimate solution to the problems of the world. And once the whole world is turned into one global Trump plaza, humanity will rest in peace. And I don't think Anyone who thinks practically can disagree with Trump's logic. Only that we may not like it. I, for one, do not like it. How about you? Jai Hind.